Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Regular listeners will remember that I recently interviewed Adobe's Colin about how voice-based interfaces have suddenly become a significant tool for marketers. But you know what? It's not just voice. Marketers are also gravitating to text-based computer conversation, for example chatbots, all in an effort to engage with customers. Another startup called PullString is arguably doing more than any other startup to make this future a reality. Consider this, PullString is the only company enabling conversations on Alexa, Google Home, as well as text-based computer conversations on Microsoft Skype and Facebook Messenger. So as these platforms surge in popularity with consumers, PullString is seeing a similar surge in demand from companies that want to build branded chatbot experiences on top of these platforms. So tonight's guest is Oren Jacob, and he's the CEO and co-founder of PullString, but he also has an incredibly rich history. Steve Jobs and Ed Catmull had personally chosen Oren to lead Pixar's internal teach team at CTO, where he helped on set with Toy Story, Toy Story 2, A Bug's Life, and Finding Nemo, to name but a few. And he has some amazing stories, so let me beam your ears all the way back to the States so we can speak with Oren Jacob, CEO and co-founder of PullString. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
My name's Oren Jacob, and I am the co-founder and CEO here at PullString. PullString is a company that builds software that helps people create computer conversation. You find PullString used in areas like building Alexa skills and Google Home Actions, in bots you might find on Messenger or Skype or Kik or Slack or other platforms like that. In bots you might find when you text an SMS back and forth to business, or also in voice-based IoT devices as well. So broadly speaking, we work in the field of computer conversation.
Now, you also have an incredible background as well. I mean, I believe that Steve Jobs and Ed Catmull had personally chosen you to lead Pixar's international team, where you were CTO and helped craft storylines for characters in Toy Story, Toy Story 2, A Bug's Life, and Finding Nemo, which is incredibly cool. But can you tell me a little about that hugely successful career in your former life?
Yeah, just one quick clarification. That was Pixar's internal team, not international team.
Okay.
And also, second clarification, I never worked in the story department at Pixar. I was on the technology side. So I certainly worked on those movies you mentioned, and Toy Story. If you're familiar with the film, at the end, Buzz and Woody light a firework that's duct taped to the back of Buzz and fly up in the sky and then land in Mom's minivan. And the rocket exhaust effects were some of the first visual effects I did on that film. Which I'm still proud of today, and show my kids that. Said, Daddy did all the smoke out of the rockets. And on Nemo, I was supervising technical director. So that meant I managed technology and ran technology for the whole show, which included the visual effects in the film, which included the water as well, too. So I worked with the entire crew there to build an ocean that looked believable enough, yet was controllable for the movie to support the story that Andrew was trying to tell back in Finding Nemo. Technologically, the role that I had there for several years was in the software tools group and was to direct the effort to build the next generation animation system. That system was first used on the film Brave, which came out a couple years ago, and now on all films subsequently. The studios continue to embellish and expand that. But Steve and Ed and the folks who ran the studio really wanted to reimagine the Pixar animation system, and I was lucky to get a chance to run that project for many years and deploy that successfully onto Brave and all the films after that.
And didn't you get caught in the middle of a crisis around Toy Story 2 as well, and have the first-hand encounters with the legend that is Steve Jobs? I mean, that's kind of incredibly intimidating.
I will say that the most accurate representation of working with Steve, just to cite Ed Catmull's book, Creativity Inc., the last sort of section of that book talks about how Steve worked with Pixar and his relationship with Ed, and also the many folks at the studio in general. And sure, Steve can be intimidating, but Steve was also perpetually an advocate for making better film and having a better experience at the studio and better products coming out so viewers would enjoy our films and our stories and what Pixar produced all the time. And that was, yes, intimidating, but also quite inspirational to work for someone like Steve, who had such a clarity of purpose in that regard. And in the case of Toy Story 2, we did actually lose the film. Someone deleted the source materials on the hard disk drive they were stored in. This is 1998 vintage, before there was cloud-based redundant backups. We lost the whole movie and spent weeks trying to piece it back together again. So there's a animated actually YouTube video that was done at the studio about that couple weeks of very complicated, very tense meetings. We eventually recovered the film, parts of the film, from some machines that were in the building, from a machine in my boss's house, Galen, that had been distributed over old ISDN lines to her house and a bunch of other crazy business, but we managed to put the film back together again. But it was a complicated 2 weeks for sure.
Wow, I mean, I've lost a spreadsheet before, and that nearly destroyed me. Never mind an entire movie.
Yeah, let's move on to the next topic, or I'll get sad again. When you're back in the day, when backup tapes were all you had, and your backup tapes didn't work, and your backup to the backup tapes didn't work, you were just kind of out of luck. That's not the modern world we live in today. Of things like Dropbox and and Box itself, and S3 and Amazon and Google Cloud and all the services that are from Azure and the places you can use and connect to back up things. You were looking at magnetic tape that you would back up things to. And just to give you one sentence of why that was a challenge, there was a file size limit on those tapes at the time that was memory serves, it's been almost 20 years now, a long time ago, but about 4 gigabytes of data would fit onto one of the backup files on one of those tapes. The movie itself and the materials for that got bigger than 4 gigabytes, and once it got bigger, the rest of the data was not being written out. We were just not backing it up at all. So you might think, well, of course, you'd have some error that you've reached the file size, so why don't you look at the error files? Well, the error files were being written on a different disk drive that had also filled up and therefore had 0 bytes available on it. So the error files were coming out empty. We didn't know there were errors going on. We were not backing up the whole film. And then when the accident happened, the restorals were unable to bring the film back that we had then lost, which is a very complicated place to be.
It's not until you share stories like that you actually appreciate and realise just how far we've come in a relative short space of time, don't you?
Yeah, that was a very complicated couple of weeks at the studio. And also, as I said in the book, so if you folks want to read more about that, there's a section in Creativity Inc. that talks about that, and you also check out YouTube and the video there to get the more comedic version of running around the building. Where's the movie? I don't know. Do you have it? I don't have it. Who has it? I don't know. Oh boy, this is going to go bad today. Yeah,
I love it.
That was a complicated time, but it all worked out for the end. And so it's fine. The film did get made. It did make its release date, and people loved it. And the franchise carried on as the company Pixar, and to all the films you guys know and love today. So it all worked out in the end.
Fantastic. And here we are now with PullString, which I recently read is an entertainment and technology company that combines art and science to enable computer conversation with characters. I mean, this instantly captured my attention. But can you offer an overview to anyone hearing about PullString for the very first time exactly what it is?
I think maybe for most of your listeners, it's easy to make an analogy that for folks who want to, for example, paint a digital picture, they might run Photoshop. And for folks who want to build a spreadsheet, they might run Excel. And for folks who want to make a computer game, they might run Unity. And for folks who want to build computer conversation, they might use PullString. So PullString offers both a way for people to create two-way conversation with a computer that has 2 main parts to it. The thing that you're writing, the thing that the bot or Alexa skill says, and then understanding what your users say back to it. So there are 2 main parts to conversation. I say, you say, I say, you say. And you can think of that kind of like the art of interactive screenwriting. So if you're writing a screenplay for a movie, the screenwriters can control what everybody says. That's what writers do. In our case, people who use PullString control exactly half the conversation. It's what you respond back with. But the other half is trying to understand what users say to you. And we built a system that lets you do that. Kind of like Excel lets you build spreadsheets, and Unity lets you build games, and Photoshop lets you paint pictures. We let you build conversation. And that's what PullString is an offering into the space. So folks who want to do that are free to check out PullString.com and download and give it a try and build their own knock-knock joke, for example.
Now, marketers are gravitating towards chatbots to engage with customers now, and we're seeing it more and more. But PullString is arguably doing more than any other startup to make this future a reality. And I believe that PullString is the only company now that's enabling conversations on Alexa, Google Home, as well as text-based computer conversations on Microsoft Skype and Facebook Messenger. Have you got any examples that will help the listeners visualize how it works? By offering a few examples of how PullString interacts with Amazon, Google, Microsoft and Facebook.
Yeah, PullString directly supports all the major platforms in text and voice form, and so some good examples. Let's pick them on different platforms here as we go through. For the folks who might have an Amazon Alexa-powered device, Echo or Dot or otherwise, in their house, playing the skill for the Grand Tour, which is a show on Amazon streaming, playing the skill for the detective show Bosch, and other ones are coming out soon, are all today on the Alexa skill store and are good examples of PullString use in market to talk back and forth with characters on that platform. On Facebook Messenger, folks like to text back and forth with bots. There are many things that are built in PullString, but I'll highlight one here. Is the project we did for the Channel 4 UK show Humans, which some of your listeners may be familiar with. And that campaign for last season let you text back and forth with the fictional company in the show, Persona Synthetics, who makes all the robots in the show, and tries to decide if the robot you've bought needs a warranty repair or not, because your family may be in danger in your house. And part of that campaign put together actually was nominated for a BAFTA as well too, which is super cool, but a very fun bot to experience as you talk back and forth with this character that's built in PullString. Actually, one of the many characters you may meet in your interaction with the bot. They are playing the role of a robot who becomes conscious in the course, retrieves consciousness in the course of your text-based conversation. And you try to help them escape the peril that they're in as well, too. It's a pretty fun experience. Recently, on Skype, the IAAF World Track and Field Championships were in London, close to your Birmingham, this past few weeks. And in PullString, on the Skype platform, a bot experience ran through the entire IAAF Track and Field Championships, where folks could text in and out to the bot as if they had a friend on the street, seeing the various events unfold, the various heats get run, who's winning, who's not, and the stories about that as well, too. So live events also get built in bots as well, too, and in the PullString platform. A couple examples that are all fun to check out. So there you go.
So when I was on the PullString website, I instantly realised how I'd probably used PullString without even realising it when I saw you guys did also a few more examples, Marvel's Doctor Strange, Top Gear Grand Tour, and Call of Duty. I mean, can you expand on those a little bit? I'm sure a lot of people listening have had those similar experiences too, but they probably don't see the PullString label, do they?
Well, we also talk about Heston Blumenthal. That was a big project on Skype that we chat about the viewers may know as well too. But let's talk about them in order. I think that you're seeing examples here of both marketing and advertising uses, promotional uses and brand usages. Excuse me. And for characters as appealing as Doctor Strange, or Heston, or all the blokes on Grand Tour, who are, you can imagine being sitting down having a pint with those guys, which would probably be a fun conversation. Perhaps complicated, but certainly fun. And also crossing now between nonfiction, that's James Hammond, Richard May, and Jeremy Clarkson, as opposed to a fictional character from Call of Duty, like Lieutenant Reyes. Being able to, when I say talk, in text or voice form, text back and forth with or chat vocally back and forth with the characters we know from the landscape of modern media, whether fictional or non-fictional. I think it's just a phenomenal new experience that can be brought to market now, that the technologies around natural language communicate. Call of Duty experience, which, by the way, won a Cannes Lion Gold a couple weeks ago in neighboring country, France. We're very pleased to report as well, too. The gamers of Call of Duty who enjoyed that experience were introduced to a new character, Lieutenant Reyes, through the messenger bot last year. And it's very fun to go back to the Call of Duty Reddit threads from that weekend and the week that followed and read the thousands and thousands of threaded comments about, is that really a bot? Well, was that a bunch of people in a warehouse typing back at me? How did they do that? Is that actually a computer answering back? There's no way that would have insulted my mother if it was supposed to be. Insulting your mother? Wait, what's going on? And the discussion back and forth amongst the Call of Duty fans as they went through the experience of meeting Lieutenant Reyes was just a joy to watch from our side. Yes, it was a bot. No, there were not 1,000 of us in a warehouse typing on keyboards. we built that experience with the folks at AKQA and Activision to deliver a credible conversation with a fictional character who's under attack in space right now and needs help with their spaceship. Oh my gosh, help me out. So the urgency in the conversation is there from the game. When you come in the messenger, you have a certain amount of time to get him his help that he needs and move forward. And it was super fun to build.
Now, that Call of Duty example as well garnered 6 million exchanges on Facebook Messenger in the first 24 hours. I mean, did that take even you guys by surprise?
Yeah, that's a lot. I think that's probably still the largest trafficked bot Messenger's ever had on the platform. That took a lot of work to prepare for that. It's very hard in a campaign experience, let me comment this way, to reasonably forecast accurately the load you get. You can do that at a broad level, and so how many servers do you provision? How many folks at PullString are going to spend the next several weeks getting ready for this level of traffic, and at Facebook as well too? But you kind of, in a campaign-based experience, when a campaign is revealed to its audience, it then goes through a very significant load spike, as opposed to when a service builds over weeks and months and years over time. The growth curve of an online service is different than, here's a campaign, things happening, everybody in. Right now. And Call of Duty has one of the most loyal and most actively engaged fan bases, probably the most, of any video game on the market in the world globally. So when you do a thing with Call of Duty, you have to prepare for a whole lot of folks who are going to come to your party and really stress test it very significantly. So I'm pleased to report we managed to hold all that traffic, which was as a messenger, which was a very, very large amount of load on our servers. Lieutenant Reyes performed admirably across all those conversations with everyone that went and talked to him.
Now, when it comes to chatbots on retail sites, I think we've all been on those websites that have a stock image and a name. But see, we're under no illusion that it is just a chatbot with generic answers. But you guys seem to be doing things differently. So where do you begin to build chatbots that emotionally connect with humans, that are not designed to trick you into believing that they're human?
I guess, there's a lot in that question. And we only have half an hour here, so I'll take 17 hours to answer that. I'll give you a couple of observations that you've touched on there. The first one is that the question about tricking someone into thinking you're a human or not, I sort of don't, having been in the field now here for over 6 years, I'm not really going to engage that question because I think a more interesting one that's more practically useful is the level of conversation that you're offering to the audience or the users or whoever you're doing at a level of fidelity that is what you were trying to achieve. You actually could have people texting back and forth, in which case it's human fidelity because it's typing back and forth to you, which is how most of Messenger works. Texting your friends, they try and text back, and there you go, or WeChat or other social networks do. When you're building a synthetic conversation, it is sometimes better to ask very simple questions and get very directed responses. For example, to close an e-commerce transaction. Your cart is full, do you want to check out, confirm purchase? Yes. I don't want any ambiguous discussion about, yes, I need a yes or no to actually charge your credit card. In a fictional experience with Lieutenant Reyes, I'm trying to have you talk to Lieutenant Reyes for as long as I can get you to talk to him because that's what the purpose of the campaign is. Where in an e-commerce agenda, I'm trying to get you to stop talking to me as fast as I can and check out with your cart. So because things are very, very different, you asked a question about connecting emotionally with humans and not tricking you or not into believing you're a human or not. The way you approach designing experiences that differently is really different. And taking into consideration, am I trying to efficiently get you out of the checkout aisle in the supermarket, or am I sitting down with a cup of coffee and chatting with a new friend I met at the coffee shop? Are totally different agendas in conversation. Yeah. And both of those start from thinking about what is the motivation of that character. I say character broadly. The motivation of the checker at the grocery store is different than the motivation of your friend you're having a coffee or a beer with. And looking at it from that perspective, you will come up with very different dialogue, very different dialogue branches, very different topics you can talk about or not. And actually, maybe most importantly, which is a very often overlooked area in the field, what happens when either in the e-commerce example or the chat with you forever over coffee example, the user or audience who's talking with you asks a question that is out of bounds of the conversation. As an example, on this podcast right now, if I asked you, hey, do you know where my kids are right now?
Yeah.
You probably have no idea. I'll tell you that it happens to be 11:30 a.m. local time on a Wednesday where I'm talking to you from, so they're in school. School started yesterday. But you wouldn't know until I told you that. So asking you about my family like that is like, you don't know. I mean, I know you know each other for now 20 minutes now, but you get the point there.
Yeah.
What do you do when you get a question out of bounds, either in the e-commerce agenda or in the fictional narrative conversation agenda? How you handle the question that the bot is not designed to and redirect to what you do talk about is actually the time when the true character motivation behind what you built is most revealed to the user. And if you punt and say, boop, boop, I don't know, check your Wikipedia, like, no one says that. When you go up to a stranger in the airport, say, boy, I'm really bummed that our flight got delayed. Yeah, you want to, oh, you see, you like Chelsea or Arsenal, whatever you're chatting about. And they say, boom, boom, check your Wikipedia. You like throw water in their face and walk away. That's crazy. So how you design the part where you're trying to find the impedance match, the connection in a conversation back and forth, relies heavily on how you handle effectively the error condition of asking things that are out of bound. And if I could just go for one more minute about this, there is a sort of theme I think you see in a lot of the writing and discussion about bots, that I should be able to ask a bot anything in the world and answer back. And I actually strongly repudiate that claim. That's not true of any human on Earth today. We don't expect that we can ask any other human anything. Yeah. And in fact, if you could answer everything, you are in fact, almost by definition, therefore have no personality whatsoever. The personality comes from how I handle the understanding of what you said, respond back, and add to the conversation and move it forward in a way that I as half of the conversation participant, think is constructive to what you want to talk about next, assuming I'm being a pleasant conversationalist with you. If I answered everything you ever asked, well, that's not true of anybody. And it's an odd thing we expect of bots, but it probably comes from the Star Trek movies, I'm guessing, because you can ask that computer anything in Star Trek and it seems to answer the questions. So maybe that's where it comes from.
It's a great point that you make there. I mean, but we have talked about the bad example of chatbots, but what really caught my attention was when you recently said that computer conversations of the future, regardless of industry, will succeed or fail based on their ability to combine artificial intelligence with character development. I mean, can you expand on that? And also, if you were to look back and join up the dots, as Steve Jobs once said, do you think that your time at Pixar prepared you for this unique offering at PullString, where you're adding character development?
Great question again. I'll take that in two parts. For the first one, the artificial intelligence portion of the field of computer conversation combines the areas of understanding what's said, that's intent recognition, natural language processing, speech recognition, and all the fields that combine together to try to understand what's said, and then the other part of AI is to decide what to say back. So that's that half. The character development part is me making, in the clearest words that I can, a very strong advocacy for not choosing the average response. As an example, if I took all YouTube videos that were ever made of space aliens that had a respiratory challenge, and I averaged them all together, I would never yield Darth Vader from that. The creation of specificity of character is not an act of averaging. It's in fact the exact opposite. It's an act of exceptionalism. Characters are unique and specific because they are not average. And a lot of people have tried to take the approach of, can I build a chatbot that looks at all the previous chat things ever said, averages them all together, finds the most probable response, and uses that as a way to avoid the challenge of actually building a character. If you succeeded at building that, which is a cool high school science fair project someone should go build, and maybe Google's probably got 1,000 engineers working on that problem right now, you've successfully only built the average answer, which is by definition the most boring one, because it is the average of them all. So from that sort of not negative argument, I'll swing around to the positive side of it. If you imagine the Facebook Messenger bot, Alexa skill, Google Action, or Skype bot, or whatever it happens to be, of Lufthansa Airlines and Virgin Atlantic, there is zero probability that Richard Branson is super excited his airline talks with the same tone, mood, and style as Lufthansa is. Like, that's not going to happen. And the way you differentiate in language, text or voice form, is your word. Well, text form is your word choice, your phrasing, your sentence structure. In voice experiences is your word and sentence structure, as well as the vocal performance of the voice you're hearing talk back as well, the acting of it as well too. Those are all things that come directly from the field of character development, not from the field of averaging previous text responses. And so as brands and companies use computer conversation for all kinds of purposes, yes, for e-commerce, yes, for marketing, yes, for entertainment itself directly, or in the other verticals we operate in, like fitness or healthcare or travel or hospitality or other things that are built in PullString. What differentiates those products in market, makes them special and also makes them memorable, is that they have a designed character and backstory and tone, mood, and style that are expressed in that conversation. That's why when you speak to a friend on the phone, you know they're your friend because you know how they behave differently than your other friends. Expanding on it then to your second part of your question, linking up the dots here, I guess go back to other things Steve said. You can connect the dots looking backwards. You can't do it looking forward. But I can't look backwards now, at least my time at Pixar, to here. And certainly the emphasis on character and story, the emphasis on specificity of the motivations of Buzz and Woody. Why are they similar? Why are they different? And what do they both want? The principles that you see written down in Robert McKee's book called Story, which has been read in the field of screenwriting very extensively, and the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, and I can reference a bunch of other things. One can pull from those in this field of computer conversation very directly. In the blunt example of in an e-commerce bot, I'm trying to get you to check out with your shopping cart. But let's expand well past that to the other things that can be built in computer conversation. Why are you writing this character in PullString that's responding back in this way? How will they help you if you're lost? How will they stop you from doing something wrong? How will they encourage you doing something correct? You have to choose what words you respond back with when you build a bot or a skill or an action. And you have to choose the cadence, the performance of how things are communicated. Take a silly example. How fast does your bot answer back? Is it a slow typist or a fast typist? Does it make typographical errors? Does it use emoji? Does it use animated GIF? Does it speak in leet speak? Those are all design choices of when you build a bot that express the character behind it. And certainly Pixar, to this day, I think is one of the companies that spends the most effort and time on the design of his characters and the stories, which I think shows very well in the specificity of what you see in the films. And we hope people use PullString and help teach them how to bring those principles to designing characters and conversation as well. That's what we do here.
I'm sure we've ignited the imagination and a lot of people listening today about how we can unlock chatbots. But if there are any big brands listening, I mean, how technical do you have to be to create interactive conversational characters using PullString's technology? I mean, do you need to have extensive knowledge of how to code, for example?
I get asked that question a bunch, and the best way I answer it is there are a couple of sort of commonly known job descriptions out there today of folks who are pretty good candidates to be able to write a pretty cool bot. Those include user interface designers, UI and UX designers. They include game designers. They include folks who do know how to code, but did well in high school English or been involved in a theater stage play. And they involve folks who work in live theater or stage or improv acting, or writing in general, prose or poetry, who do well playing computer games. So this field of computer conversation is an interactive art, and people who only want to work in the linear narrative arts will be challenged by this. If you enjoy writing the whole screenplay and the entire screenplay, that's like writing a script for a movie. That's not how building a game works. In this field, you have to accommodate what the user and the audience says back to you. In fact, every other line of dialogue is not in your control. But the folks who enjoy exploring in the interactive arts and enjoy language and the crafting of the written word and writing dialogue in particular, I think is quite easy for them to reach to a successful text or voice-based bot in PullString. And the system was designed for those kinds of professional content creators, not the ones who paint pictures, they use Photoshop, but the ones who write interactively is what PullString's for. Now, for folks who do code, I don't want to diminish them. In fact, we quite support them quite directly. People can code directly in PullString if they want to. And there are times you need to do that when you're, for example, connecting with some e-commerce payment system or something for a technical reason. Yes, that's a code-based project. But to build computer conversation in its native form does not require a technical background. It requires an appreciation of language and an understanding of the interactive arts.
Now, we've also talked about the importance of human elements in chatbots, but there was an incredibly moving story on Wired recently where someone created a chatbot which was a Dadbot of his dying father, so he could speak with him after he passed away. I mean, can you tell the listeners about that story? Because I think it's amazing.
It's a lot to talk about there. It's a remarkable piece, and I'm so pleased that PullString was able to participate with James Flahos when he wrote that for Wired. Mm-hmm. When James first thought about building a Dadbot, that was... I believe before his father had been diagnosed. And the diagnosis came, which was quite a severe diagnosis, and then his father passed. Mm-hmm. Across the arc of working on building the Dadbot. And before he passed, his dad got to experience the Dadbot, which is the bot of himself as well. And also recognize that its purpose was to carry on the imprint of his life beyond what he knew was only a short amount of time left. And then now that he has sadly passed, as you see in the end of the article, James's children, who are the grandchildren of the Dadbot subject, now do ask to talk to the Dadbot and talk about more stories and continue his memory and legacy that way going forward. So we did our best to help and facilitate James's very deep, emotional, and then complicated journey through the project, answering questions that he had and giving advice and encouragement along the way. No one really tried to do something quite that's I guess meaningful, emotional, and significant before that we were aware of. So we were certainly honored and humbled to be asked to help him do that. But the work was James's, to his credit. And I think it brings up a remarkable set of issues. I'll share a couple with you that are worth sharing with the audience here. Yeah. We have preserved memory in paintings and from cave drawings back in the day, then to black and white, then color photographs, and then film and video, as well as living images. And that's the thing we've done for thousands of years as societies go. And certainly in a very simple, more direct level, pictures of our own kids and our parents are commonly on my desks here at work, broadly speaking. To be able to preserve and celebrate and honor the memory of someone through an interactive experience is not a thing we've done before. There's not been a way to express that before. And maybe some listeners might think, well, will that replace taking the audio recordings I have of my great-grandpa who was part of the Great Generation or not? No. It's not that. It's not a replacement. It's a different kind of thing. Much like there were movies, there was television, then we got to video games. Here I think you have written transcripts of history, then you have recordings of history, and now you have an interactive conversation with someone that you can create. And that's just another additional way, a rich embellishment, if you will, to help honor the legacy of James's father through Dadbot. And that's a technology can now allow us to create those things, which we weren't able to do before, which is super cool. And I thought that it was another interesting choice James made, was to let the Dadbot only be used by his family. He built a bot for an audience of like a dozen people, which are his kids, nephews, nieces, uncles and aunts, and cousins. That's it. And the fact that you can have such an intimately targeted audience who now appreciates Dadbots and celebrates that for that reason is a very different use of PullString than, for example, Lieutenant Reyes in Call of Duty. But I'm just excited to see it. I'm excited to see how he explored that space as thoughtfully as he did. Yeah, there you go. There's a lot more to talk about there, but happy to go anywhere else you want to go with that, but there's so much more to say. It's hard to stop talking about that.
No, it really is. It's got quite poetic and something beautiful about it. It really is. So you've got to be very proud of what he's helped create there. So a big thank you for coming on the show today. But before I let you go, can you remind the listeners of where they can find out more information about PullString and, of course, anything that we've talked about today, or if they need to contact a member of your team if they have any further questions?
Yeah, very directly. www.pullstring.com is the obvious website URL, and you can check out the platform there and download yourself if you'd like to and start building knock-on jokes this afternoon if folks want to do that. And an email to any of info@pullstring.com or any of the obvious email addresses will get our attention over here if folks want to talk about using the PullString platform and building things with it as well. I mentioned previously some of the examples like the Grand Tour and Bosch skills on Amazon or in the Alexa Skill Store today. The Humans bot on Messenger is in the Messenger platform today, and you search for Persona Synthetics, Persona Synthetics, and there you go.
Well, you've really opened up my eyes today on just how far you can expand chatbots. It's much more complicated than I ever could have imagined. And I love how you can go from knock-knock jokes to creating something completely meaningful, significant, and quite beautiful at the same time. So a big thank you for coming on today. And next time I'm in San Francisco, I'll have to hook up with you for a cold beer where we can meet those three dodgy blokes from Top Gear and find out what they really talked about.
I would love to sit down with those three blokes from Top Gear and we'll have a little discussion about what it's like for them to actually be in the Alexa skill themselves. That'd be fun.
Brilliant. Thanks for coming on today.
Cheers. Have a great afternoon. Talk to you soon.
I'm fascinated by chatbots that emotionally connect with humans. And also love how Oren is all about the character approach. Because these chatbots are not designed to trick you into believing they're human. In fact, quite the opposite. They're designed to engage with you on a particular topic in a way that's as compelling as speaking to a human who's also interested in the same subject as you are. And I think he made a great point there about how we wouldn't expect to speak with someone who would know absolutely everything about everything that we want to know. Because if this was with a real person, we would question their personality and think there was some kind of sociopath. But equally, we expect it from chatbots, and we expect them to know everything. So it certainly offers a bit of food for thought there, and I could have listened to Oren share his stories all night, especially around the late, great Steve Jobs. So I hope you enjoyed today's show as much as I have. And of course, I cannot thank Oren enough for coming in today and sharing some of those fantastic stories with us. And more than any of that, of course, a big thank you to you for tuning in to listen to this show. I know you've got so many distractions and content coming your way. The fact that you spend a few minutes listening to me each day means the world. It means I'm not going mad sat in a dark room talking to myself. So a big thank you. But I'm afraid that's it for this episode. So all that's left for me to say is, until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.